Thank you, and good evening. It's my pleasure to talk to you briefly about colorectal cancer. Here we go. So colorectal cancer screening. I want to talk to you a little bit about the burden of disease in our country, the evidence for screening, and about our province-wide screening program. So colorectal cancer, what is it? So you've seen this schematic a few times this evening, and we're going to show it here again today. And basically, if I could turn around. So this is as if you're looking at me. As if you're looking at me, this is the right side of the colon, this is the left side, and there's the anus or the bottom end, and this part here is the rectum, and this part here is the colon, or the large bowel. So it's the colon and rectum, it's the large bowel. We call it colorectal for short. So what you see in this picture here, this is now the left side, you can see that this is a drawing of a cancer, and the cancer is arising on the inner lining of the organ, the inner lining of the colon. And if it were arising down here, that would be a rectal cancer. If it were arising over here, that would be a right-sided colon cancer. So this is what it is. It's a cancer that rises and grows from the lining of the colon. So what symptoms, or how would you know that you might have colorectal cancer? You might have rectal bleeding. You might have anemia, which is a low blood count when your doctor does your blood test. You might have some abdominal discomfort that comes and goes. Or you might have a change in your bowel habit. You used to move your bowels once every day, and now you're moving them every second day or every third day. A change, a recent change. But the main thing to keep in mind here is that there are many other causes of these symptoms, and they're very common. And so there's a commoner cause of rectal bleeding, after all, is hemorrhoids. That's a much commoner cause of rectal bleeding than colorectal cancer. So we cannot rely on these symptoms to know whether or not we have the disease. And so what symptoms do you have? Most often you have none whatsoever. If there's a colon cancer that arises in your colon, we know that on average it takes about 3 years or so while that cancer is growing. It takes about 3 years until those symptoms, some sort of symptoms, occur. So there's an opportunity to detect that cancer earlier before symptoms would occur. So how do you know if you have it? You don't. That's the main point. Audrey Hepburn died of the disease. Who knew that? The point I want to make is that, you know, you can go to a cocktail party and people will freely talk about breast cancer and breast cancer screening. They might even talk about other diseases, but they don't talk about their colon. Who goes to a cocktail party and hears people talking about their rectum or their colon? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because we're shy and embarrassed about this part of the body. And in the same way that we are inherently, in our culture, shy about this part of the body, when prominent people have been diagnosed with a disease, they haven't tended to come forward. Only in more recent years have people tended to come forward and say, you know, I was diagnosed with a disease, I didn't know I could have been screened, you ought to go get screening. That's only in recent years. We've been hesitant. And one of my pitches is that we need to be less embarrassed about dealing with and moving forward with screening for colorectal cancer. So this is the burden of disease in our country. This is the estimated number of new cases, men and women in our country diagnosed with these cancers for this year, 2012. So you can see prostate, number 1, lung, breast, and colorectal cancer. 23,300 Canadian men and women will be diagnosed with the disease this year. And here are the number of deaths. Lung, number 1, colorectal, number 2. If you add cancer deaths in men and women, Canadian men and women together, and you remove deaths that are due to smoking, lung cancer, colorectal cancer is the number 1 cause of non-tobacco-related cancer deaths in our country. And it's fair to say that most people don't know this. It's a major public health issue. Pamela Wallin was diagnosed with the disease. She's well, but she has come forward publicly in many different occasions publicly and said and talked about her disease and how it came to attention. She was treated with surgery, she's fine, but she's helped make the case to the public for screening. And what I would say is, we can tell you about the evidence as experts in gastroenterology and tell you what important public health issue it is, but I really want to underscore the point that when a prominent public figure comes forward and talks about it, it's much more impactful. So we don't like to see people diagnosed with the disease. When a Pamela Wallin comes forward, or Daryl Sittler, whose wife died of the disease, Wendy Sittler, it's very important and helpful for us in raising awareness about this public health issue. So here's a graph that shows our risk of colorectal cancer as we get older. And what you can see is here, this is the rate, and here is our age. And you can see that when we reach the age of 50, the risk starts to go up. It's not zero under the age of 50. About 7% of people with a new diagnosis are younger than 50. It happens. But 93% of people with a new diagnosis of the disease are older than 50 years and older. And that's why we start screening, on average, in people at the age of 50. It's because of this graph. So for the past 20 years or more now, we have evidence that screening works, that it reduces deaths from colorectal cancer. It's a bulletproof case. And the three main screening tests are listed on this slide: the fecal occult blood test, or the FOBT, sigmoidoscopy, and colonoscopy. So here they are drawn on this slide, and this is to show you that on the very left you can see, again, the drawing of the colon. You can see the cancer. And what the fecal occult blood test does is it detects microscopic blood that's present in the stool. You don't see it. That's why it's called occult. You don't see it. You don't see any bright red blood in your stool, but it's there, and that's what the test detects. Sigmoidoscopy is the picture in the middle, and that's where we put a flexible tube into the rectum and lower part of the colon. You need to be prepared for that ahead of time, usually by administering an enema at home. And on the right-hand side, there's colonoscopy, where you have to drink clear fluids the day before and clear out your bowels, and then you get a little bit of sedative when you go for the test, and we look inside your whole rectum and lower bowel. So these are three screening tests. I want to underscore the point that screening is doing the test when everything's fine. Your bowels are working fine, you have no problems. It's like when a woman goes for breast screening with mammography. She's not going because she's got a problem. She's going because it's routine every 2 years going from a mammogram to screen for breast cancer. This is routine screening when there's nothing wrong with your bowels. So a big important event happened in our province in 2008 when the then Minister of Health, George Smitterman, announced a 5-year program of implementation of province-wide colorectal cancer screening. It was a large investment, $200 million over 5 years, and we're the first Canadian province to launch a province-wide organized screening program. And what is our program? It's called Colon Cancer Check. And what is it? It's the fecal occult blood test for people at average risk, meaning 50 years and older with no symptoms. For those who are at increased risk, and that means you've got a close, what we call a first-degree relative who's got a diagnosis of the disease. So that's a parent, a brother or sister, or much less likely a child. First-degree relative. You have at least a 2 or 3 times higher risk of the disease, and the program recommends that you go on to colonoscopy. So, I was looking around the audience earlier. At least half of you are 50 years or older, I reckon. Talk to your family doctor about getting screened if you haven't been screened. And for those of you who are younger than 50 years, for goodness sakes, tell your parents and aunts and uncles about the need for screening. So, in summary, big public health issue in our country, bulletproof evidence for screening. We now have a provincial screening program, and I urge you to get screened. Thank you very much for your attention.